She remembers your scent without ever having hugged you. She gets chills when she remembers the conversation that never ended. And she wonders, in the middle of the shower, why the hell did you leave her with that feeling that there was something there? But it didn't happen. Most men believe that sexual tension is born from touch, from a stolen kiss, from one body pressing against another. But that's the end of the movie. The real tension starts much earlier. The moment you enter the room and she simply feels something change. It's not about saying something impactful or making a theatrical entrance. It's about presence. A presence that invades without touching. A silence that dominates without threatening. A look that exposes without revealing. This is the invisible art of men who don't try. They just are. Most men run after the physical, the touch, the kiss, the bed. But the masters of seduction know. The body only surrenders when the mind has already been possessed. You don't have to be handsome, or the funniest in the room, or the richest. The man who masters his own energy, who is comfortable in his own skin, doesn't need permission to be noticed. He radiates an unsettling calm. It's the kind of calm that makes people shut up when he starts talking, that makes other women pay attention even if he's only looking at one. He doesn't compete. He doesn't force. He fills the space with a quiet authority that doesn't require validation. It's as if he's saying with his eyes, I know who I am, and maybe you want to find out too. Nietzsche said that true power isn't about shouting. It's about being heard even when you're silent. And in the art of sexual tension, that's visceral. The modern woman, surrounded by stimuli, empty propositions, and men desperate to prove their worth, finds in confident silence a kind of hypnotic abyss. The man who masters presence masters time. He speaks slowly, he walks slowly, he touches the air with his eyes. He transforms a superficial environment into something that vibrates in an almost energetic field. And she feels it. Her body feels it, even without ever being touched. This feeling is ancient. It's animal. Cleopatra, when she met kings and emperors, didn't launch into fiery speeches. She knew that the first impression was made by the tension of her mere presence. It was the silence charged with intention. It was the way her eyes lingered a half-second longer on the other person's eyes. It was the way her voice seemed to have been designed to be heard only up close. And that made men lean in, get closer, get lost. This skill cannot be learned by faking it. There is no script that can save the man who still depends on external reactions to feel like someone. You only create this presence when you are at peace with your own chaos. When you no longer need to prove anything, but still provoke everything. When your every gesture is deliberate but seems spontaneous. When you walk into a room and the atmosphere changes, not because you are dominant, but because you are not afraid to be seen. And here is the contradiction that the weak cannot bear. The true seducer does not control others. He controls himself. While other men occupy the space with noise, he occupies it with magnetism. He doesn't need to talk about sex, he doesn't need to touch, because the simple fact of being there is already an unspoken invitation. He creates desire with absence, with suggestion, with the simple fact of being the only one who doesn't need permission to be noticed. But the most powerful thing about all this is that this presence, this invisible tension, can only be felt by those who are awake enough to perceive it. And that's when the game starts to deepen. Because now, it's no longer about you getting closer to her. It's about her trying to decipher what you didn't show. And it's at that exact point that real desire is born. Not in what was said, but in what was left in the air. And what's left in the air, my friend, only grows with time. What remains in the air grows. True desire is not in complete presence, but in controlled absence. In the interval between the look and the word, in the gap that it needs to fill. Because the human brain is an anticipation machine. It gets excited by what is missing, by what has not yet been delivered. And that is where ordinary men lose the game. They give too much. They talk too much. They touch too soon. They try to fill the void with excess, when what really seduces is the well-designed void. If you watch a film that has left you tense from beginning to end, you will notice a curious structure. The best moments are those in which nothing happens, but everything seems about to happen. It is the same logic. Tension is born from doubt, from possibility, from the almost. The touch, when it comes, is only the conclusion. The real excitement is in the interval. This is not internet theory, it is biology. The brain releases dopamine, the neurotransmitter of pleasure, not when we receive the reward, but when we wait for it. This is what we call the reward anticipation theory. In other words, it's not the kiss that's addictive, it's the expectation of it. It's not the sex that's addictive, it's what comes before. And the man who masters this expectation dominates the woman without having to touch her. Imagine the following. You're talking to a woman. At a certain point, she says something provocative. The mistake of the week? Responding immediately, explaining, fighting back. The master, on the other hand, pauses, smiles slightly, looks for a long time, and says in a low voice, "Are you sure about what you're saying?" And changes the subject. What did he do there? He planted a doubt, an emotional echo. He elicited a reaction from her that won't close, and her brain naturally will try to complete the circuit. That's the secret. You don't create tension with conclusions. You create it with pauses, with spaces, with beginnings that won't close. A compliment that comes but stops halfway. A sentence that begins with, "You know what I noticed about you?" and ends with a "never mind." This is a weapon of seduction in its raw form. You don't give in. You provoke. This is exactly what dark romance authors explore to perfection. The male character never gives in completely. He says little. He observes a lot. He makes the protagonist and the reader try to understand what's going on behind that heavy silence. The real man who understands this, who applies this, becomes a walking enigma. And female desire is born precisely in the conflict between wanting and not being able to. Think about it. If she's sure you like her, where's the mystery? If you throw yourself into it, explain yourself, give in, where's the game? What keeps her interested is the space between what you show her and what she imagines. And what she imagines will always be more exciting than any truth. That's why your role is not to give her the answer, it's to build the enigma. Most men enter an interaction as if it were a sale. Let me show you my value. Look how interesting I am. Listen to me, choose me, accept me. And in this rush for validation, they sabotage themselves. Because in trying to show everything, they lose the only thing that could generate fascination: ambiguity. A woman wants what challenges her, what intrigues her, what is not completely available, but also not absent. It is this in-between space that causes the emotional short circuit. It is the, "Why did he look at me like that and then change the subject?" It is the, "Why didn't he text me after that great night?" It is the, "Why didn't he touch me, even though it seemed like he wanted to?" These questions hammer away, and each question is a thread of tension, an invisible link that is being created between the two of you. A field where you exist even when absent, where your absence provokes more than the presence of others. This is not manipulation, this is art. It is rhythm. It is knowing how to balance exposure and withdrawal. It is understanding that seduction is not a direct attack. It is a game of shadows. And here comes an uncomfortable truth. The more you try to prove that you are the right guy, the less you are. Because the truly right man, the man of real value, is not there trying to convince. He is there occupying his own space, breathing calmly, choosing what to say, and most importantly, what not to say. It is in this chosen silence, in this purposeful gap, that true desire is born. Tension does not need noise, it only needs absence in the right place at the right time. And when done well, this absence screams. She goes home thinking about you. She goes to sleep with your name stuck in her throat. She wakes up wondering what could have been. Because, while other men give themselves up, you continue to be the mystery she wants to solve. And the mystery she wants to solve often begins with a single look. But not just any look. The kind that lasts half a second longer than expected. That doesn't blink. That says, "I see you," without needing a sound. The woman who encounters this look feels her body react before her mind processes it. Because this is not a social look, nor a casual look, nor a polite look. It is a look that carries intent, that explores, that challenges, that disarms. You have to understand, most men look at a woman as if seeking approval, as if to say, "Do you like me?" The man who creates tension, on the other hand, looks as if he already knows the answer and yet maintains the mystery. He doesn't rush. He doesn't lower his eyes. He doesn't smile out of obligation. His gaze is connected to her body, and her entire body transmits a single message. I want to, but not now. The voice is the second thread of this invisible chain, the voice that commands and invites at the same time. That has rhythm, that has weight, that seems to be in no hurry, as if she were used to being heard. When you speak with that voice, calm, firm, sometimes deep, sometimes whispered, you create a mental scenario. The woman doesn't just hear what you say, she feels how you say it. And then she projects herself into that sound, imagining herself there, inside the scene that you didn't describe but suggested. Listening is also a weapon, but not just any listening. It's a listening that absorbs, that responds with the body, that observes every gesture, every micro-expression. When she speaks and realizes that you really listened, that you reacted with a subtle movement of the head, with a real pause, with a slight arch of the eyebrow, she feels like she's really being seen. And at that moment, you didn't touch her, but she already felt it. She felt the heat. She felt the impact. She felt the tension. Because when your gaze penetrates and your voice envelops, her body responds even without touching. And that, my friend, is the beginning of the end of resistance, the beginning of obsession. And that's when you understand the game was never physical. The body is just a reflection of the mind, and her mind is now infested by you. The touch can be forgotten, the spoken word can evaporate, but the planted idea, the unresolved desire, the unexplained look, the presence that was left hanging in the air, this idea sticks, ferments, dominates. And the more you retreat, the more it advances. The less you try, the more it tries to understand. Do you want to be this man? What provokes without invading? What excites without touching? What transmits without having to say? So understand once and for all, sexual tension is not about being aggressive. It's about being magnetic. It's not about insisting. It's about attracting. It's not about what you say, but about what she feels when you're silent. Now comment below, when was the moment when you felt a woman desire you the most without even touching her? And remember, while the weak try to convince with words, the masters seduce with presence. If this video sparked something in you, share, like, and spread the word. Because the game has changed.